These are in listen-only mode.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Business Training Made Simple's fourth in the first Free Thursday webinar series. Shortly I'll be handing over to you David Taylor, who has a sack full of information that he'll be imparting with you today. But firstly, just to introduce myself, I'm Elizabeth Floyd and I head up Business Training Made Simple, and I'm ably assisted today by our two marketing and event coordinators, that's Mark Thomas and Sarah Kerrigan. They'll be standing by to take your questions, so you know you can post questions at any time throughout the webinar, and we'll be taking these probably at the end. We may interject now and then, but just post your questions whenever they come to the fore, and we'll deal with as many as we can at the end of the webinar. It's great to see another full house here, and welcome back so many returners. We absolutely love running these free webinars, and that reminds me actually, for those of you, I can see we've got people from all over all corners of the world. For those of you who aren't local, we are working on some remote e-learning products at the moment. So if you're interested to know more about that, don't forget to let us know. You can do that via the questioning service. So let's get on with the webinar, and a warm welcome to David Taylor. Thanks for joining us today, David.
Great to be here, Elizabeth, and very much looking forward to working with the team here at Business Training Made Simple and imparting lots of helpful information.
Excellent. So let me tell you a little bit about David before we get started. So David brings almost 20 years in the UK media scene. He's a career in journalism, media and public relations, marketing and communications, and over the past 2 years strongly focused on social media. David works with both businesses in private and public sectors. He's a member of the CIPR, and he's the co-author of his first book, Fusion, which is about marketing in the social age, and has just completed co-authoring his second book, The Business of Being Social, and that's due out in April. David now runs his own consultancy, 2010 Media, and over the past 2 years, he has social media trained over 1,200 people. Indeed, David delivers Business Training Made Simple's Chartered Institute of Marketing accredited Social Media Strategy for Business course, and our certified full-day Facebook course, of course, which is why he's here today. So it's over to you, David.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. Okay, so what are we going to be covering today? The title of it is about advertising and using Facebook advertising to drive more engagement and sales. But really what we need to do is go back to basics to understand what exactly the page should be doing. I'm sure all of you appreciate it's all very well advertising, but if you're going to be driving people to a page which doesn't work very well, then you'll be getting a much less effective return on your investment. I'm also then going to cover the different ways in which you can be advertising on Facebook. Since it floated last year, the shareholders of Facebook have very much been looking to make sure it gets a much more of a greater return, and therefore they need to be making money. So they have been introducing lots of different ways of advertising on Facebook. And in fact, one of the interesting things I would say is increasingly you have to look at advertising to maximize the effectiveness. We'll then look at understanding your audience and the people you've got there, how you're going to be communicating them in the best way possible. So if you're advertising, who exactly are you advertising to? Pretty much a standard principle which most people in marketing would have been using for decades. I also will be looking at how we run competitions on Facebook. It's a different thing from advertising. It's a great way to leverage your brand, great way to get more likes to your page, and obviously meet specific business objectives that you've got. And of course, you need to be measuring exactly how this is all working for you. You don't just run a campaign and hope for the best. It's about really tracking the performance of your page. I'm sure you appreciate that in the same way that Google has Google Analytics to measure the performance of a website, in just the same way, we're looking at Facebook Insights to understand exactly where you're getting the most bang for your buck, let us say. So, moving swiftly forward. I would actually say that a good Facebook page should be like a great party. It may sound obvious, but social media is actually about being social. So it's very important that you go down that route of being social and wanting to engage with people. So using this analogy, a Facebook page, a great party has a certain number of different things which make it good. You need the right venue. So for right venue, you need a good looking page, and the page has got to work for you. Then you need the right people. You need the right food, drink and music at your party. So how does that equate in a Facebook page? That's really the right sort of content. You've got to have the right content. Then you need the guests. You need the guests at your party. You need to invite the right guests. You need to tell them about your party in good time to make sure they're there, and you need to look after your guests. And that's exactly the same as a page. You need to think about how you're going to get people to like your page. And when they like your page, how are you going to be looking after them? Taking the party analogy further, as a host, your job is to ensure that the party goes with a bang, and you need to be introducing people, you need to be networking with people, and ensuring that they've got their drinks topped up and they've got enough food, etc. And so exactly the same goes on a Facebook page. You've got to ensure that you, as the person who is running the page, is ensuring that all the people who like the page are being looked after. You are asking questions, you might be running polls, and really what you're trying to do is invite people to engage with you on that Facebook page. Tip for you all, it's not about the amount of likes of a page, it's about how many people are talking about it. For those of you looking at your Facebook page now, you'll see next to the likes, it will say people talking about this. That indicator is how many people have engaged with your page in the previous 7 days. So you may well have lots of likes, but if there's no one's engaging with your page, then it's not really on. So that's the party analogy. And of course, if you're running a number of different parties, you want people to leave the party and say what a great time they've had and go and tell their friends. And that's exactly the same with Facebook. You want to engage with people, look after them on the page. They want to be coming to your page on a regular basis. And in fact, they want to be sharing the information on your page and telling all their friends about what a good page it is. So that is my, if you like, analogy. It's not like a website. A Facebook page is not like a website. You should treat it with the same seriousness as a website, but it isn't a website. It's more of a place where you engage rather than just talk at people. One of the things we at Business Training Made Simple are always stressing is about meeting specific business objectives through social. So in all our courses, whether it's social media introduction course or a Twitter course, etc., what we're always looking at is, are you going to be meeting a specific business objective? None of us ever does or shouldn't do business or marketing for the sake of it. You're doing it with a specific purpose. And in fact, this is actually where a lot of firms have got into hot water, because they haven't really understood this. They've said, let's do Facebook, without knowing why exactly they are doing Facebook. So it's very, very important that if you're going to have a Facebook page, if you're going to think about using your Facebook page, and in fact using advertising or competitions on your Facebook page, you really need to think about what exact business objectives you are going to be meeting by having that page. So looking at the slide, plan your page very well. What are you going to achieve through this page? Do you set yourself some key performance indicators? Again, that's something we are always stressing at Business Training Made Simple in our courses. Who is going to manage your page? What content are you going to put on your page? Again, the advertising is all very well, but ultimately you're going to be driving people to this page. So you want to make sure that that page is very, very good. So the planning stage is very, very important. You need to look at all the aspects of planning. You need to be listening. One of the very, very important points about social media, which people fail to understand, is the very importance of listening. Interestingly enough, it's been revealed very recently that 40% of people who use Twitter only actually do it to listen out. They don't tweet at all. And exactly the same thing you should be thinking about with your Facebook page, is listening to what people are doing, listening to what's going on in the market, listening to what people are saying on Facebook pages, etc. Classically, then you move forward to analysing exactly what that does. What insight, what information you're getting, what works, what doesn't work, etc. And then the final stage, that is when you decide to engage. And in fact, many companies and many organisations I've worked with, when they've done this whole plan, listen, analyse, engage process, by the time they've got to the engage, they realise they're not actually ready to engage. So it's very, very important that you do your planning. If you're going to be mounting an advertising campaign on Facebook, what are you driving people to? Is it a page which looks pretty poor, or is it in fact a page which very much sums up exactly what you do and is going to be building your brand? So moving swiftly on then, here are my 10 top tips for what your page should be doing. Firstly, it's very, very important that you have a great cover shot. In the same way as if you went to Selfridges, you would expect their windows to look fantastic, so it is with your Facebook page. It must be 851 by 315 pixels in size. That is not a negotiable picture size. That is the size that Facebook give you. In the same way, you've got to have a decent logo, again, which is 180 by 180 pixels in size. If you have a logo, which is landscape, that's not going to work in a square. So what you need to do is you need to go back to designer and actually create a right logo. Moving further down the page, in the About section, you've got to have all the relevant information that you have about your company. So, who are you? What do you do? How you add value? Very classically, what we're talking about is the mission statement of your business, exactly. So if someone's landing on the page, they want to know, who is it that we are talking to? Who is on this page? You'll see on the right-hand side of your page, Timeline. Now, Timeline for Business was brought in just under a year ago, and what it's a great way of putting a narrative of your business. So if you're like somewhere like Manchester United, who goes all the way back to 1879, classically, you can have a timeline which stretches all that there, which you can pack full of very interesting pictures, videos, comments, links, etc. So you're building content into your page, and if you use the party analogy, you're making sure you've got some very, very good food, drink and music going on. Moving further on in that vein, it's very important you have lots of pictures, videos and links going up generally on a day-to-day basis. One of the things we talk about in the Facebook strategy course is the fact that there is actually a filter which Facebook has introduced, which means that not everyone sees everything which is posted on the site. And therefore, one way of making sure you're very visible is ensuring you've got some great pictures, videos and links. At the same time, you can customize your page with tabs which link to bespoke apps. These are like sub-pages, if you like, and you can have up to, apart from photos, a further 11 different tabs. So effectively, it's like having a website. You've got a home page and then you've got 12 further pages. You need to have a space for recommendations. That's one of the things which is afforded to you as a page owner. And the recommendations are very important. You may say you're brilliant, but it's about what your customers say. So it's really having those recommendations there and in fact encouraging people to use those recommendations. When you set up your page, and I'm sure many of you have, what I would hope is that you've actually registered your Facebook page. If you go to facebook.com/username, you can register your domain name. Now that should be either keyword friendly or brand specific. Once you've got that, it means that no one else can have that domain. So even those of you who think you may be not ready to have a Facebook page, it's worth setting one up, keeping it unpublished and registering that domain name, because at least as an insurance policy, no one else can have it. Like a good website, you've got to have a strong call to action. So when someone comes onto your Facebook page, what do you actually want them to do there? Do you want them to buy a product? Do you want them to find out about a webinar? Do you want them to have a dialogue with you? And finally, and this may sound like common sense, but you'd be surprised, it's got to be something you are really, really proud of. Facebook is like a parallel universe. There are 1 billion people on Facebook. There are only 2.5 billion people online in the world. That gives you an indicator of how important this site is. So if you've invested a large amount of time, energy, and creativity in having a wonderful website, really, you've got to be doing exactly the same with your Facebook page. Otherwise, you're going to be letting yourself down. So, moving swiftly on, hopefully by now you'll have a picture of exactly what your page should be doing. You'll know you'll have a domain which has been registered. You'll have people who will be admins of your page who will understand what they can say, when they can say it. You'll have a page which looks fantastic. It's got a lot of content on it. You may well have some customized tabs on it, which is fantastic. So really what you've got as a destination point, you've got a very, very strong looking page, which you're now ready to start driving traffic to. So at the beginning I talked about the fact that Facebook are now needing to show a return on the investment from their investors after it's floated. And what you'll appreciate is that Facebook was originally set up as a platform really for computers. It wasn't very mobile enabled. Unlike Twitter, where 80% of people in the UK are actually using Twitter on mobile devices, the proportion on Facebook was very, very much lower. It wasn't seen as being very mobile friendly. Now, huge steps have been taken over the last year to counteract that, and the latest information we have is that over 50% of people now using Facebook are in fact using Facebook from a mobile device. Now, the problem there was, in a phone or a BlackBerry, there's not a lot of space for the ads down the right-hand side. And what they had to do is come up with different and varied ways of advertising. And that's exactly what they did. So we are now at the stage where realistically you've got 3 ways of advertising on Facebook. The first one are what I would refer to as display ads. These appear on the right-hand side of the screen when you are using a computer. So in this way, it's acting very, very similarly to pay-per-click on Google. On Google, just very, very briefly, for those of you who may not understand the whole dynamics of pay-per-click, what you're doing is you create an advert. The advert then is placed onto Google, and within that advert you'll have a number of keywords. It's got to be a snappy advert. It will contain a number of keywords, and you're bidding against other people for people who are searching for those particular keywords actually to arrive onto your advert. What you'd like them to do is to see your advert, and ideally they want to then click on your advert. Therefore, if you decide that you want to advertise handbags and you are a shop in Witney in Oxfordshire, then you would actually have keywords handbags Oxfordshire retail, for example. So if someone was searching for that in Google, up will come your advert at the very, very top of their screen, or in fact down the right-hand side. If that is in fact what they're looking for, they can then click on your ad, which will then take them through to a specific landing page. It could be your website, it could be an optimized landing page, or in fact, now, it could in fact be a Facebook page. So that is the principle of pay-per-click. You only pay when people click. It's very much the modern version of advertising, rather than just hitting, hoping, putting an ad in a magazine and hoping that you're going to get lots of business off the back of it, but you can't really measure it. Here it's much, much more targeted because you're giving people what they are actually looking for. On Facebook, it's very much a similar way with the display ads. Down the right-hand side of the page, in your personal profile, you will see ads. And those ads work in exactly the same way in that they are targeted ads with the right keywords. They've got to be very snappy, very, very sort of catchy ads which are going to catch people's eye. And people then have the option of seeing that ad, and then if they wish, they click on that ad. It then takes them through to a specific destination. Now that destination could be a website, could be a landing page, or in fact it could be your own Facebook page. I have a client who is in a estate agency in real estate, and what we are doing, we are using Facebook display ads as a way of driving traffic in a specific target market actually to a landing page on their website. This is something which people may not understand, that somehow you think, well, if I'm advertising on Facebook, I've got to take people through to Facebook. You don't necessarily have to take them through to your Facebook page. You can actually use it as a viable way to drive traffic to a website. In fact, what we've found using these Facebook ads, but again, we're using them in certain areas because it's got to be about that targeted demographic. When we've used those ads, it's actually generated more traffic to the client website than actually Google advertising. So it can be a very, very viable and cost-effective way to actually drive traffic directly through to whatever online presence it is that you're interested to see. The second one is the sponsored stories. Now these appear in news feeds on both mobile and PC version. Here it's different from an ad because I mentioned earlier that Facebook has a filter, and this filter measures what affinity that you have with your fans, or what affinity that you have with your friends. So I'm sure all of you have got lots of friends. Some of your best friends you'll have a greater affinity to than some lesser friends or acquaintances, and so it is on Facebook. It's about understanding if you have a great friend who is a very, very keen windsurfer, then Facebook would judge that because you're such a good friend, it may be that you also like windsurfing. Therefore, if your friend likes a page which is all about a windsurfing course which is taking place in Windsor, in Bray, then it may then come up and you think, well, because you're friends with Jimmy and he likes that windsurfing course in Bray, it's likely that you may well do as well. So therefore, those sponsored stories will come up. And what it's like, it's really trying to use the basic principles of Facebook. It's all about how people are connected. So rather than the display ads, which can be still a little bit random and it's arbitrary, Facebook is judging by what you posted on your wall or who you like or your friends you've got, they're a little bit arbitrary and it may not be as targeted as you like. With the sponsored stories, it's actually a little bit more targeted because if your friends like something, there's a higher degree of possibility that you are likely to do it. So you'll see this sponsored story in your feed. You have the option to click it or not. This is very, very similar actually to newspapers or magazines, where you open a magazine and because you bought the magazine, the ads should in some way be fairly much tailored to you. You have the option of looking at the ads, or if you don't want to read the ad, then you can look at and you can skip it and look at the article on the other side. And so it is with sponsored stories. The third one, and this caused a little bit of controversy, I have to say, is the promoted posts. These appear within news feeds on mobile devices. Now, with promoted posts, you do need to have 400 likes of your page. You need to have gone through, if you like, a pain barrier to get your likes up to a state where you have what is called a reasonable fan base. Now, when you go into the promoted posts, once you've got your 400 fans, it gives you the possibility of making sure that your posts reach a wider audience. Now, I'm going to make some of your hearts sink now and throw you a couple of statistics. First one is this: 92% of people who visit a page will never ever go back to that page. So just because you've got people liking it, that don't mean to say they're having a look at it. By the same token, on average, when you post something to your wall on your page, on average, only 15% of your fans will actually see. So if you've got 100 fans of your page at any one time, only 15 people may well see what you've just posted, which is a little bit depressing, actually. And it used to be that if you had a page and you posted, most people would see it. Logic would say that if I have a page, I have people like my page, and I post, they will see it in their news feeds. Well, unfortunately, Facebook has this filter, and that filter is really, really quite a effective filter. And because there is so much information, so much being posted on Facebook, we're now at a stage, really, where people don't necessarily see what you're posting. So what you're having to do is to try and reach even your own audience of likes, you're going to have to start to pay. So really, what you'll see, to recap on some of that, so the display ad. Now this, again, it appears on the right-hand side of a wall on your Facebook page. You can click it if you want. You don't have to click it if you don't want. The sponsored story will appear within your news feed. Again, so you can see it whether you're on your computer or, in fact, if you're on a mobile device. And the third one is this promote your post. And in this case, you have two options. The first option is when you want to try and get that through to the people who like your page, and what you'll see is it gives you this idea about audience, so people who like your page, and you may well be paying a minimum of about $5. And again, this is where people have got rather upset, because they're saying, I'm now going to have to pay to get through to my fan base on Facebook. Well, unfortunately, that is the case. So you can pay as little as $5 if you want to try and get that post. Now, this is all about content. I mentioned earlier the importance of content. The posts are very much based around content. If you've got an amazing blog, or you've got a fantastic video, or you've had a great photo, which you just think is absolutely wonderful, and you want to make sure you want to get it out to a wider audience, then what you need to do is you'll have that highlighted promote button next to your post button on your page, and to get that post to the widest possible audience, you're going to be paying. So you pay on it, and that means that they are more likely to see it in their newsfeed. So you're going to get much more engagement from your fan base. You can also decide to extend that further to people who like your page and their friends. Now, when you go into that promoted bit and you set the budget, you could be paying, potentially, if you've got a lot of likes for your page and you want to get it out to a very wide audience, you could be paying anything up to $100 to promote a single post. Now, again, that might be very, very cost effective, and you could be analyzing what you're getting for your return on that. When it tells you what budget you're setting, it will give you an estimated reach. Now, if you've got, say, 1,000 fans of your page, and you decide you want to promote that post to your friends and their friends, you may be spending $50, and it will say, actually, this will get you through to an audience of perhaps 2,500 people who are all going to see that in their news feeds, or potentially see it in your news feeds. So again, it's a very good way of promoting actual pieces of content. But I come back to what I was saying earlier, that realistically, you've got to have a decent content. You're not just going to write a one-liner saying, I'm having a dreadful day today and I wish it was the weekend. You don't want to promote that. It's not interesting, engaging content, and that's not really going to work. So those are the three key ways which you can actually be using. Now, you've got a certain amount of demographic criteria. So if you're going to go down the pay-per-click route, this is a list of all the criteria that you can actually put in. Now, if you start off, I believe there are something approaching 32.5 million people in the United Kingdom and something approaching 1 billion people in the world who are on Facebook. So when you decide you're going to be running a campaign on Facebook, you'll start off with that very, very large figure. As you put each of these criteria into the ad and you tick them all off, what you'll find is that number will come down and down and down. So let's, for example, you start off with location. If you want to target a whole country or a state or a region or in fact a town, you can put that in. So if you say, I want to target people in Manchester, you can then put Manchester in and all the people on Facebook. And it will then tell you how many people are actually on Facebook within Manchester. You can then target people's age. So you want to target people between 18 and 24 who live in Manchester. Then you put another variable in. You want to do gender. Okay, you want to target men aged 18 to 24 who live in Manchester. And what you'll see on the right-hand side is a figure will be coming down and down. So maybe there are 120,000 people aged between 18 and 24 who live in Manchester. You can then start narrowing the categories further. You can look at their precise interests. Maybe they absolutely love football. They're very, very keen on football. You start broad categories. Start looking at maybe movie, film, people. And bear in mind that a lot of people will put a huge amount of information about themselves. The more information they put about themselves, the more information that Facebook know about them, and therefore the more targeted it can be your advertising. So you can have your broad categories, which may be movie and film. Then you've got subcategories, which could be Bollywood movies. So again, if you maybe had an Indian audience, aged between 18 and 24 living in Manchester, that's going to come. You can then look at the connections, the friends of connections, what people are interested in. People will say what they're interested in on the site. Relationship status, if you want to be targeting people who are engaged, or they are just married, or just about to have a baby, or just about to have their 40th, then again, you're going to know about that. Languages, if you want to target certain languages, if you wanted to be targeting people in France, maybe you could even have a French Facebook page. But you can look at languages, and then people will put their education and workplaces. So what you're seeing there is a very wide range of demographic criteria, which you can put in to your ad. So you can make these pretty much targeted. The great thing about pay-per-click is these things can be turned on and turned off. You can actually look on a day-by-day or an hour-by-hour basis at what is happening with your ad, whether you're getting the clicks and whether you're getting the impressions. And if, for example, I was targeting Manchester, maybe I shouldn't be targeting Manchester, maybe I should be targeting Liverpool, or maybe I should be targeting the whole of the northwest region of the United Kingdom. It's very granular, and it will tell you a huge amount of information. It will tell you where potentially your customers are. So running a pay-per-click campaign, so you've decided to go down that line, it's very important you think about your target demographic. Going back to the previous slide, if you really don't know who your customers are and you really don't know your target demographic, it's going to be a bit of needle in the haystack thing. Next thing, you've got to make sure you have a well-worded ad. In the same way as, I'm sure all of us have seen tabloid newspapers or traditional newspapers, what they do is they put an ad which is going to grab someone's attention and make them read the article. And so it is with Facebook. Very, very important that if you're going to have an ad, it will say, check out the latest information on saris. for more information, click here. You know, it's got to be an engaging, interesting ad, which is make people want to click. As I've been saying earlier, it's very important that you've got a Facebook page or landing page, potentially on your website, which is optimized. There's nothing worse than doing marketing and you're encouraging people to go somewhere, and when they go somewhere as a destination, it's not going to work. In a previous life, I used to do public relations, and I was my job. I was tasked with getting editorial in newspapers, and I did very successfully. But ultimately, one of my ex-clients, they hadn't got a very well optimized website, and as a result, they couldn't actually capture any of the leads which had come from the public relations. And in exactly the same way, this is what should be happening. And that's why I've stressed the importance of making sure your page works and is well optimized and at least has a call to action. Next thing, you need to make sure that you plan when you want your ad to appear. Now, another beauty of Facebook Insights, which is Facebook's equivalent of Google Analytics, it can tell you when people are most engaged. So if you know that you post something at 6 o'clock every day, it gets more people engaging or seeing than when you post at 4 o'clock. Therefore, you should be building up an idea about when this target demographic, when are they engaging on Facebook? Many of you, I'm sure, will have no idea. And it's about really testing and measuring and understanding when it is they're going to be engaging. Now, bear in mind that a huge amount of people, over half people using Facebook, will be doing it on a mobile device. They're not then going to be limited to when they're at work or when they're at play or when they're on the train or the bus, etc. So really, you've got to understand that it's always been true in marketing. You've got to understand your target market. It is even more important now because you can, through Facebook, go out and find that target market. You need to also set the right budget. It's like any form of advertising. You've got to make sure that you have enough funds, you have enough investment to make sure that advertising works. Now, the great thing again about Facebook, and certainly pay-per-click in general, is you can set pretty much a daily budget or a campaign budget. Therefore, if you say, I only want to spend $20 a day on Facebook, you are only ever going to spend $20 a day, if that's what you can afford. But really, it's understanding. I would always suggest it's good to do a little bit of a test. Again, with another client of mine, we decided to enter into Facebook pay-per-click, and what we did was we did a small test to see what was generated off the back of it. It was successful, therefore we rolled out the test further. Which then brings me on to the final point, which is you do need to keep testing and measuring. There's no such thing as a one-hit wonder in marketing. It's never been that case. You don't do it once and say, well, wow, that was fantastic, it worked. It's understanding what works, what doesn't work, when people engage, when people aren't engaged. So if you know, very often I hear, oh yes, we've run pay-per-click campaigns, but they didn't really work. Well, there could be a lot of different reasons why they didn't work. Maybe their page wasn't very well optimized. Maybe they didn't have a well-worded ad. Maybe they didn't have the right target demographic. Maybe the ads were appearing at the wrong time, and maybe they had the wrong budget. So as you see, you've got all these different variables. Unfortunately, people go into it not really understanding what they're doing it and why they're doing it, and as a result, they actually come unstuck. So that's very much, I hope we've covered really the understanding of how you're going to use pay-per-click and understanding of pay-per-click. And obviously pay-per-click can be a very, very effective way of getting people to like your page. I mean, to use the party analogy, you want to make sure you've got the guests at your party, and obviously a great way of doing that could be through pay-per-click advertising. And in fact, another takeaway is if you are setting up a new Facebook page, rather than really harassing all your friends and forcing them to like your page against their better judgment, it may well be that it's worth thinking about doing a small-scale pay-per-click campaign to increase the likes of your page. Now, the great thing about that, you may get the likes up to over 400. Once you're over 400, you'll then be able to promote. So you're investing a little to invest a little bit further in your page. But There is another way in which you can actually get people to like your page, and in fact get people to engage with your page. And that really is through running competitions. Now competitions, they appear as tabs on your Facebook page. Now I mentioned earlier that on your on a page you've got the ability to have 12 different tabs, one including photos. Those tabs can be pretty much tailored for whatever you wish, whether it's e-commerce, it could be an advertisement, it could be a competition, it could be Twitter, YouTube, or whatever. They can be customized. There are a lot of people who can help you customize that. And exactly that's where the competitions would normally go. And as with all of these things, it's very important you've got to plan properly. You've got to think about, what is this competition? Is it going to be of interest to my target market? Are people going to be engaged with it? And are they likely to share that information to their friends? There are obviously strict terms and conditions as well. You've got to make sure you've set out your terms and conditions. It would be no different than if you decided to take an advertisement for a competition in something like the Saturday Telegraph magazine. You've got to think it through. You don't just say, oh great, let's just run an ad at a competition. So it's very, very important you plan properly. And again, go back to that slide. What are your strategic business objectives? Is that business objective going to be met by a Facebook competition? So Facebook itself has very strict competition rules, and it does not disclose customer data. You've got data privacy, etc. So what I would suggest, if you're going to be running a competition, if you just go into Google and you put Facebook competition rules, you will see Facebook's own guidelines. And at this juncture, while you're having a look at that, I would also look at what you can and cannot do with your cover shot of your Facebook page, because unfortunately many brands, and I've noticed recently some very leading brands, are in fact infringing Facebook's own guidelines and what you can put on a cover, and strictly speaking Facebook could take that page down, which isn't so good. So once you've gone thinking about planning, thinking about the competition rules, etc., the next thing to do is look at the sort of application and tab that you're going to be having on your website. There's a number of different companies out there. One I could say, for example, is called WooBox. That's WOOBox.com. And what they can do is they're pretty much a one-stop shop for anything you need to do about creating this special tab on your page and competition. And obviously one of the other things is you've got to be able to capture data. It's a great way, of course, of capturing data and getting information about people. So that can all be done through that customized tab. It's not something you've got to agonize over and try and teach yourself. Facebook FBML is equivalent of HTML on Facebook. So they can work with you. You can come up with a very engaging tab which will sit on your Facebook page, a very engaging destination site. So people say, like this for a chance to win, etc. All of that can be done within your page, and that can be pretty much done by one of these proprietary companies like WooBox.com. So I've got a great example of exactly how this has worked in practice. A hotel called Chewton Glen, which is a boutique hotel in the United Kingdom, and they ran this competition. They used WooBox, and it was called Win an Overnight Stay for 4 in our brand new Treehouse Suite. So a lovely engaging page, nicely designed. It shows all the terms and conditions and what you need to do, like this, but you need to enter your details, etc. And they did all the right things. They planned, they looked at their target audience, they understood what needs to be done, and they ran this competition. The result, they increased the likes of their page from 1,200 to 13,500. Now, as you've heard me talk today, that in itself shouldn't really be a destination. For me, liking a page is equivalent to walking in a shop. You haven't bought anything, you just walked in. Really, what you want to do is get them to engage. Now, over 2,000 Facebook users shared the competition on their own walls, meaning it was seen by close to 400,000 users. What was happening there was engagement. They were using word of mouth. That is, in essence, what we're trying to talk about here. So they then got people engaged. They then measured what was going on. They saw increased activity to their website using Google Analytics, and as a result, they had substantially higher call volumes in all operations. What happened then? They made more money. So it's a great way of building that engagement, building that fan base. How did they know that that worked? Very simply, they measured it. And there are a variety of different measurements. Facebook Insights, as I've mentioned, is a very, very good way. So you go into your page and you'll see all your insights, and you've got a huge amount of granular detail which you can actually go into. Google Analytics, very, very important. If you don't have Google Analytics on your website, please, if you take one thing away from this webinar, get Analytics on your site. It will tell you a huge amount. Social Mention is a very, very good monitoring tool, www.socialmention. I mentioned key performance indicators earlier. It's very important you set yourself clear KPIs. What are you trying to do with this page? How are you going to measure how it's working? And what I would finally say is you've got to test and test again. Plan, listen, analyze, engage, test, and then go back to the planning stage. So we're getting pretty much close to the end. What I like to do now is just wrap up, if I may. And I've got some five takeaways, which hopefully you can put to good use afterwards. Firstly, make sure your Facebook page is up to the job. If you're thinking about a party, is that one of those really dull, dire parties where there was nothing to drink and the music was rubbish and you got caught talking to the boring person in the corner? Is your Facebook like that, or is it a roaring success? Plan a proper campaign. It's vital that you plan this through properly. You don't just do it on a whim because someone says it's a good idea. Select the form of advertising which meets your business objectives. It may be that promoted posts. Maybe you've got fantastic content, but what you want to do is get that to a wider audience. Maybe that you want to be using display advertising to drive people to your website, but ultimately you've got to meet your business objectives. Think about your audience. It's vital that you choose your audience carefully and keep testing and keep measuring. Things are changing all the time, and just because some people are engaging with Facebook now, they might not be engaging next week, and vice versa. So it's very important that you keep testing and measuring. So hopefully you've got 5 takeaways there, and very best of luck.
Well, that was great, David. We've got a lot of questions in, so let's hope that we can get some of those in before we finish, or most of them. Let's start with one. First of all, 2 people, both David and Stephen, have been asking about audio and slides afterwards. We are recording this. You will get the slides and the audio, so we'll be sending that out to you as soon as we've uploaded it. A question from Claire. Well, actually, there are 2-part question here, one from Claire and one from Valerie. You mentioned registering the domain name. Do you mean that as a page? E.g., I have a profile page in my name, or the name of my business. Could someone else use that as a page?
Okay. Very important point on Facebook, Claire. A person, a human being on Facebook has a profile. That profile, you can register the domain name of that profile. A brand, organization, or business has a page. That also can have that domain registered. When you go to www.facebook.com/username and you are operating under your personal profile, you'll have the chance to tailor the name of your profile, and it will also give the opportunity to actually tailor the name of all the pages which you manage. Now, at this juncture, it's worth pointing out, when you name your page, you've got the option to rename it only once. So if you call if it's facebook.com/Devonshire handbags and you decide, actually I don't like that name, you've got one opportunity to change it, then you don't have one. So that hopefully that answers that question.
So just to recap, if Claire has her name set up as Claire Smith,
Yep.
and then the company's name is Claire Smith, and she hasn't actually claimed that page now, so another Claire Smith at this stage could have
Absolutely.
it.
Very good point.
Okay, important, Claire, then to get that done. And Valerie asked where again to register that page. I think you just covered that as well,
so
didn't you?
just to reiterate, that's facebook.com/username.
Okay, perfect. Stephen, another question, a good question here. So how does he create the opportunity to be part of a sponsored story? Is that the 400 likes?
No, well, I think it's a very, very good question. I think you need to work on making your page very, very engaging and giving the sort of content that people would be naturally interested in. As say, Facebook are continually looking at, they've got all sorts of algorithms deciding which pages are visible. In fact, I hate to say it, which profiles. So you might actually notice some of your friends, you don't see their news feeds. But really, to answer your question, Stephen, I think what you need to be doing is ensuring that your page is as engaged as possible with your fan base. I wouldn't get hung up about whether it's going to be in sponsored stories or not, but I think really what you need to do is make sure that it's engaged, because if your friends are engaging with it, then it's more likely to be visible.
So in short, really, Facebook decides when that's
Absolutely.
going to happen. You can't decide it yourself. Great. Okay, a question about analytics, and you covered analytics and mentioned there in those last 5 tips or so, or takeaways to make sure that one gets Google Analytics. Peter wants to know, are there analytics built into Facebook?
Yes, very good question. I mentioned it in the webinar there. It's called Facebook Insights. When you are administering your page, you'll have the option to see the insights. It's exactly the same as Google Analytics, but it is within Facebook. So just to recap on there, it's called Facebook Insights. If you manage a page, you will be able to see the insights. I do believe, though, you need to have, I think, 20 fans of your page to be able to see insights. But insights on Facebook is equivalent of analytics on a website.
Excellent. Martin says, this is a bit of a cheeky question, but how do costs compare with Facebook advertising and Google advertising?
Not a cheeky question. In fact, it's a very good one. It all depends. I think you'll appreciate that pay-per-click is exactly like an auction. If you went to an auction and you saw a wonderful chest of drawers which you really liked and there was no one else bidding against you, then you're going to be able to get it at a good price. If there's 20 people in the room who are all desperate for it, the price shoots up. The competition in Google is actually very fierce, and in fact recently costs have gone up significantly for pay-per-click. And my colleagues, certainly my colleague David Miles, who runs analytics and pay-per-click course on BTMS, Business Training Made Simple, he has noticed that the costs are actually going up. Facebook at the moment is pretty cost effective, but I would anticipate that the cost could go up. The simple answer is, how long is a piece of string? It depends what your business is, what your target audience is, and how the competition is. It's worth doing both side by side. Run, for example, you might set yourself a budget of £100 a month, and you put £50 a month into an ad on Facebook and £50 a month into an ad on Google. You'll soon know which is more cost effective or not. But very good question.
And funnily enough, David Miles, our trainer on our both AdWords and analytics, is clearly out there listening to us, because he's just posted a question to remind you, or for us to remind you, that you can learn all about the analytics side on our analytics courses. So don't forget that, because that enables you to monitor both Facebook and AdWords. And he also gives in his both of his courses some insight into PPC ads for Facebook as well. So
PPC, pay-per-click.
Yeah, sorry, pay-per-click.
Too many acronyms.
Yeah, sorry, we get so jargon oriented. Okay, one last question here. You said the most important thing is about engagement. And on the last tips, you said one of the greatest ways is through competition. Any other ways? Any other tips?
Yes, very much so. I think this may sound slightly counterintuitive, but it's very important that you actually have a promotional strategy for your Facebook page. So before you even have your Facebook page, how are you going to tell people about it? So there are all sorts of range of things. Word of mouth. You can actually put your Facebook page on an email signature. You can put a Facebook page on your business card. You can have point of sale. You can have interaction with people. You can, and this is very interesting, you can even use traditional things like direct mail or even adverts. I'm sure many people now are seeing adverts on the tube or adverts in magazines and newspapers where it's actively advertising a Facebook page. Why? Because they want you to go to that Facebook page. So the answer to that is it's important you put together an actual strategy for how you're going to get people to see your Facebook page and then how you're going to get them to engage with it.
Excellent, David. Well, I think that brings us to the end of all the key questions we have here. So just sort of closing now, I'm talking about what we covered, really the three key areas of advertising through Facebook: pay-per-click advertising, sponsored stories, and promoted posts. And in addition to that list of takeaways David mentioned, I picked up a few things really, that the importance of getting your page up over the 400 mark, getting your likes up over the 400 mark. An interesting way to do that might be through a simple ad campaign. And also don't forget to claim your page domain name. I think David Miles has again reminded us that about the courses. So I'm going to, if we just move on to that next slide, we've got a special offer that I was going to announce just for our Facebook course. But as David's there, busy away in the background, we will extend that £30 discount off any of our courses that we've discussed today, which is Facebook, Analytics and AdWords. You need to book any of these by the 13th of February, although we don't say that there, but we will in our follow-up email. And we will send you a code to get that discount as well. We're going to do a post-course survey, so we'd love that you participate in that, and we'll follow up with that discount code. Anything else, David, before we go? Thank you so much for today.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure, and certainly I look forward to any of you who'd like to come along the course. It's a full-day course, and I think people have had their eyes opened to really what an involved, technical, and highly intuitive marketing tool Facebook is. But I think a lot of people make assumptions that it's really quite simple, my kids are on it. When you actually start using it for business, it's a whole much more involved, and it's the course we run is a great way of actually opening people's eyes to what is really a big challenger to the internet itself.
Excellent, David. Well, on behalf of David, myself, Sarah and Mark here at Business Training Made Simple, we look forward to seeing you on our next Free First Thursday webinar, which in fact happens on exactly the same date next month, the 7th. So we'll see you here again, and we'll be letting you know the next hot topic. Thanks.